slides, some live demo of some of the storage solutions that we offer at Studio Network Solutions, and you can certainly purchase through media distributors. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in as we go along into your window, and we'll try to get to them all at the end. We'll also have a brief Q&A session live at the end as well from that standpoint. So again, thank you all for attending today. I'm very happy to be here. Please know that everyone here has also entered to win a GoPro Hero. So we'll see a little bit more of that at the end. And I'm going to go ahead and start to jump in. So what we're here to talk about today is shared storage. What kind of efficiencies can you get within your workflows of shared storage? And then how does the storage help you work? So people have been sharing source material now for 15, 17 years. That's how long ago my company, Studio Network Solutions, was born. And we've been doing nothing but video storage since then, and it's certainly evolved quite a bit over the years as to what other tools does an editor need to get through their day-to-day life as quickly and efficiently as possible. So with that in mind, my name is Steve McKenna. I'm the National Sales Manager for Studio Network Solutions, and we'll be jumping in and kind of going through all this stuff together here today. So I want to start off with a few of our clients. I'm sure you guys recognize a lot of these names that are out there. James Bond is done with an Evo. Certainly the NHL playoffs are done, which is topical for right now on Evo. And so we're very used to dealing with anything from, you know, indie one or two man productions all the way up to multi-hundred editor facilities. The Evo can scale with you. So within the production life cycle, we all kind of do things a different way, but we all run into the same problems. So first, we generate a lot of content, especially with the increase in resolutions, the constant march of technology going now into 4K and UHD and all of that stuff. So what happens is we either get that material from a camera card, or we get it delivered to us on a direct attached storage drive, like a little C drive or a GTEC drive or something like that. Maybe you're working off of that at your workstations. So there's a few things that we run into with that. A, we have multiple copies of everything across the network, which is not efficient. The time that it takes to copy from one drive to another is time that we could be editing if we had it all loaded up in one spot and we could share it out. Also, the ability to find out what's on those drives. If they're not always on the network and you don't have a database of them, we don't know where anything is. So if we have to go find something, sometimes that can be quite a hassle. Shared storage and even direct attached storage sitting around in a closet is much like the closet at the end of your hallway, you know, in the house. It's everyone in the family throws everything in the closet. You might know where it is, but when you have to go retrieve that item from the closet, that could be a multi-week cleaning process to make sure you get there. There's also some dangers of having all of your stuff just on a single drive or a single tape. Certainly drives can fail. That's why we have RAID protection and things like that to allow redundancy within a network. So if we have a drive sitting on a shelf for 8 months and that's our backup, you know, our permanent backup solution, what happens if we go to plug that drive in and bring something back and the drive doesn't spin up? What kind of redundancies do we have to protect about that? And the other thing we have to get into is speed. A direct attached drive is very different than a shared network drive. You can direct attach over Thunderbolt or SAS, whereas those are not network protocol cables. So if we want to get into a network and we start sharing, now we're using gigabit Ethernet, or we're using fiber channel, or we're using 10 gigabit Ethernet. And how do we get a solution that provides us the speed that not just one person is hitting one drive, but 10 people are hitting a drive? And how do we make sure that we have the speed necessary for all of them to be working off the same source material simultaneously? So at Studio Network Solutions, we've been trying to answer all of these questions now, like I said, for about 17 years. We have over 50,000 customers worldwide. In the entire history of our company, all we've done is storage. We were born out of an audio studio. Most of our dev team and engineering team are video editors and audio editors. So what these guys have done and managed to do is really build a product that they always wanted to have. So there are other softwares that they've worked with in the past that we could build the functionality into, and we'll get into some of that here shortly. But basically the idea behind SNS is kind of three-pointed. First and foremost, we have an open architecture. What you'll see with many, many video servers out there is that the way they can control and guarantee stream counts and things like that is to be proprietary. So when you buy this video server, any other storage you have on the network really isn't going to play with it. You're going to have to manage it in a different way, and then you're managing multiple networks. Evo, we try to be all-inclusive with any part of a production lifecycle or post-production lifecycle that we can be. We do this with standard network protocols that we've tweaked and optimized for video. The other thing we believe in very strongly is your ability to scale up over time. We do that by not charging any per-seat license fees with our software. So if you're a 2-man shop or you're a 100-man shop, the software is free when you have our hardware, and that continues on into the future. So as you grow, as you scale, we never charge you for more software. So kind of the high-level features that solve the problems we saw just a minute ago are the ability to search and index. Search and index are key to managing your assets. So we can do things like harvest system metadata and find things by file name, provide tagging, and I'll show you that here in the live environment very, very shortly. But what's important to understand here, too, is not just search online media. So a lot of people, what they do with asset management, or if there are other storage servers that claim to have asset management, what they do, again, because of that proprietary nature, is they can only search themselves. They can't search everything on the network, which isn't particularly helpful unless when you started your company, you started with that storage vendor and you picked the right one and stuck with them forever. With Evo, you can search not only what lives on the Evo server, on the SNS server, but anything else on the network, whether it's physically connected or not. So if you have a GTEC drive, for instance, you can plug it directly into the server, you can plug it and reshare it over the network as a volume, you can plug it into a workstation and index it, and then when that drive is then physically removed from the network, whether it be a FireWire, SATA, or whatever, Evo still remembers what's on it, because the database that we create and that you're searching actually lives on the server, which is always on, right? The ability to share. How do we get, just instead of having multiple source clips and having to copy those source clips from one workstation to another and move them around, how do we let everyone just access the same thing at the same time? The next big thing we're going to have to get into, and a lot of people don't realize this within their workflow, is the verification of files. How do we make sure that when we copy a file, that all of the copy happened appropriately and in the right order and all of the data made it over? What most people will do, whether it be for ingest or to move from one drive to another, is they'll do a drag and drop copy via the OS. That has some inherent danger. The OS does not perform any verification, so you can actually corrupt the file silently and not realize that it's been corrupted until you open it. That will usually present as weird sound pops, pixelation in the video stream, just some bad frames, choppiness. And when we don't understand why that happens, usually it's because the Finder or the Windows Explorer has done a copy and some of the data got lost. It didn't all quite make it. The other thing we want to do is unify everything into one window for you. So what a lot of people have, we have a lot of different production tools in our tool belts these days. So we have maybe an NLE, we have a VFX software, we have an asset manager to search. All of these require an interface for the user to deal with. So we could wind up with 4 or 5 or 6 windows open before we ever touch our production application. One of the ideas with Evo and with our share browser software is to give you a unified central place that can manage everything, whether it be our storage, other storage, asset management, search, tag, all of that stuff from one window without having to clutter up your desktop too much. And then one of the most important things you look at with any storage system is how can it grow with you. Maybe you're in HD today, but you're going to 4K tomorrow. You're getting some new cameras. Are you going to be able to deliver in that format? All of these things come into play as we look at shared storage. So as we come in here, those are the high-level features that can really enhance any workflow to help manage different parts of the production lifecycle. Now, what we've also done is each application has its own specific demands on shared storage. So at SNS, we've endeavored to really provide a workflow for whatever production application you might be using. If you're an Avid house, we can give you native Avid project and bin sharing by emulating the Avid file system, so that your workflow is as if you're connected to Avid branded storage, and we do this at a fraction of the cost. If it's Adobe or legacy Final Cut 7, we have some auto-locking to prevent file overwrites, and we'll get into a little more of that here in just a bit as well. We have auto-locking for any file-based software. The ability to integrate for network-aware applications. These are things, again, like Avid, like FCPX, that have databases driving them, like Maya. We have the ability to be the storage for that as well. We jump in here, actually. Let's jump into our live environment now. All right, guys. So what you're about to see here is our share browser software. So this is the software that comes free with the Evo and begins to let you manage everything in that one central location, as we were just talking about. So I think it's good to start with where most people are today. Let's go ahead and hide it real quick. So normally when you're in a shared storage environment, you're connecting in one of two ways. And you don't have to worry too much about what protocol. The thing that we're most interested in is, does it work? So but you're generally going to connect either over a NAS or a SAN. If you're going to do a NAS, if you guys are familiar with network sharing and things like that, in the Mac, you're going to do a connect to server. And you're going to credential yourself in. It's going to ask you for a password and a login. And you can do that. And you can set it to mount automatically onto your desktop when you boot the next time. But all that does is put a drive on your desktop. If it's a SAN, you have a software that all it does is put a drive on your desktop. So if I'm in a mixed environment, I'm managing multiple types of shares. Maybe my graphics department has a NAS that I want to hit, but my video guys use a SAN. They have to mount all of these things up, and then they have to open a Finder window to deal with them. And you can't search it because if you try to use Spotlight or Windows Find, it creates all sorts of unnecessary network chatter and kills the speed. So then we can't stream video back. It's self-defeating. So instead of having to deal with, again, opening multiple Finder windows and multiple application windows, with Evo what we provide is Share Browser. So when we come into the Share Browser, you can see that I have all the volumes I have access to on the left-hand side. These can be permissioned off. Maybe the video guys only need to see a certain volume and the graphics guys need to see a different volume. It doesn't have to be every volume. It can be whatever you want. And again, it can be third-party storage. So if you have that legacy direct attached drive that you were using and you want to reshare it over the network, you can plug it into the server over USB 3, and you can share that out for everyone to see and work with, or you can plug it into a workstation and share it out that way and have it show up here as a volume. So again, a central point of management for everything that you're doing. You open Share Browser, you open your production applications, and you get to work. So as we bounce around, I can mount volumes from here. All right, I can unmount, I can refresh, and then I can start to manipulate the file structure here in the middle. So instead of dealing with multiple Finder windows, I can see everything as it appears, and I can manipulate it from here. So if I want to copy, I can do a drag and drop. I can do whatever I would be able to do in the Finder right from here without having to open multiple windows. As we get in, since we're talking about copy, this will be a good time to talk about the verification steps that Evo can provide for you. So again, if you do a drag and drop copy via the Finder, you do have that potential for corruption. With Evo, if I do a Command C here and I go to right click, notice I have a paste and verify command, Shift Command V in this case, or Shift Control V in the Windows environment. What this is going to do is it's a one-time bit-for-bit verification. So instead of just shooting the data from one location to another and hoping it makes it fingers crossed, it actually checks. It sends a bit, and then it says, hey, did you get the bit? Great, I got it. Send the next one. So this adds a bit of time to the copy, but a lot of peace of mind. So instead of actually having to watch every second of ingested material to make sure that it's come through cleanly, we can let the computer do its job. And so if I do a paste and verify, as long as I don't get an error message, that file is intact, and I don't have anything to worry about. So this is great for one-time copies, right? Maybe I'm just doing a quick ingest and I want to make sure the file's there and gets there intact. But when it comes to what we have to do today is we have deliverables and we have to move things maybe multiple times. So maybe what we want to do is something like have a more permanent log of what this file looked like in its original tact, and that's where these checksums come in. So MD5 checksum, if you're not familiar with it, is an industry standard way of doing data verification. In fact, any of you delivering to the Discovery Network, I think they require an MD5 checksum as part of the deliverable. So what we can do in this case is I can actually store an MD5 log file as a sidecar along to the source material. So it's going to calculate that out real quick, and then we're going to see it pop up underneath, much like we see up here, with the .md5. So now that checksum log, that verification log, can be moved around the network anywhere the file moves and then verified against. So we don't have any nasty surprises anywhere. So if I want to do a quick copy with the Finder, take my chances, I can move it, and then I can do a right click and actually verify from that MD5 sum. So hopefully we get a successful. I didn't move it anywhere. Yes, we did. Great. I know that that file is intact. I don't have anything to worry about. This is also particularly useful for remote delivery. You can put this onto a drive that you then mail off to a client, or you can use any of the integrated cloud services that we use. So again, we're all about one window, right? Any of these 5 cloud services can actually show up in the share browser as a share. You can verify things onto them. Now the client has something to check against on the other end. So if you get a call, why do these 5 frames of video look awful? What happened? You can say, no, not our fault. Didn't look like that when we uploaded it. Check the verification log and maybe try re-downloading the file, or maybe we go with another delivery method. The most likely time you are to have this kind of file corruption on copies is delivery over a wide area network, because there are so many hops, so many places for data to get lost. So this gives you a nice little CYA, so to speak. So as we jump into the next thing, now that we can verify copies and we can move things around the network, the next thing we need to know is after we moved it, how do we find it? So with Evo, again, it's designed to be very easy to use. We have the search capability up here, search bar, very much like you're used to using Spotlight in the Finder. So it doesn't require a lot of training. And let's say I want to do a search. Let's go do a search for NASA. Cool, so here are all the things that have NASA in it in some form or fashion. There's harvested system metadata, things like, hey, I found this in the file name, and you can see that Evo's telling you it found it in the file name. And when we talk about harvested system metadata, what we're really talking about is anything you would find here in the get info pane, right? So codec in use, when was the last time the file was opened, things like that. And while that's helpful, especially if we have a regimented file naming structure to be able to find stuff, that's great, but maybe we want to add some custom metadata as well. I'd like to add keywords to search against or notes. You can do that as well. And when you have a search result, Evo will tell you where it finds the metadata. So an SNS tag, which is a share browser tag over here, is more like a keyword search. These are comma-separated values. And so right now we see, well, it's not Ann Arbor, Michigan, so we're going to take that out. But maybe it's been assigned to Joan. This is a video about the Museum of Flight. It has to do with NASA. It's going to Seattle. So I can search by those terms now. So let's go ahead and do a search for Museum of Flight. Helps if I can type that. Search across all volumes. Oh, actually, search for ready. Approval. So what's neat here again is I can see where it's finding it. So a comment is a wide open text field. It's free form. I've got a lot of people using the comments field in a variety of different ways. Some of them are using it for log notes. Maybe it's watch for the sound hit at a minute 15, so you need to know to take off your headset right before that happens. Some people are using it for task management. So in these cases, these files are ready for approval. So if I'm a producer, I can sit down at my workstation with the share browser. I search for ready for approval, and this is now my task list for the day. I can preview those files in the upper right here with sound included. See what's going on, and then I can leave comments back. So now instead of having to do approval renders and long approval meetings, I have a way to communicate at a high level quickly back and forth. So that while this is ready for approval, maybe I approve it, maybe I deny it. You know, deny, don't like transitions, you know, change to star wipes, because I'm a sucker for a good star wipe. All right. So I have the ability now to communicate and collaborate without having to all get in the same room and kill my productivity for the day while we all sit around and discuss stuff. The other thing that's kind of neat here with the asset management is because we embed it on the storage itself, it can act upon the storage. So a lot of third-party asset managers or softwares layered on top tend to, when you do a search, return a result or a path. So what we see here is, great, this file lives on the ingest volume in the Bosch Classic Boats folder with the file name of this. Well, I still have to go find that. I have to mount the ingest volume. I have to find the folder. I have to find the subfolder. That can be time consuming. With the Evo, if I right in the share browser, if I right click, notice I can mount the volume directly from the search results should it not be mounted but connected to the network, so I can get it online very quickly. And then I can also say take me to the file. So now there it is. Great, I can now get straight to work. Just drag it into my NLE and go. All right. Notice too that we have some search parameters here, so I can search. Maybe I only want to look for human-entered metadata. I would search for tags only, or things like that. Or if I don't want to search across offline drives, I only want to see what's actively being worked on the storage. I'm not interested in the drives that are on the shelf right now. I want to limit my results there. I can do that. I have the parameters to do that. So some of the other all-encompassing parts of the workflow that are going to work with any NLE and help out are going to be a lot of the flexibility that we give you after the Evo is set up, because a lot of post-production, a lot of production is very project-based, and sometimes one production has very different demands than another production does. So whether those be codec in use, resolution, frame rate, different NLE, the Evo is going to be able to kind of adapt with you as your needs change over time. So if we run into the web UI right here, this is the admin side of the Evo. This just gets hit through a web page. If you have credentials to get in, you can get in from any system on the network. And there's a few things we can do from here. So first and foremost, we notice that the Adobe space is about a little more than half full. Well, maybe we're getting extra material. Maybe I've got 39 gigs free. Maybe I have 50 gigs of stuff coming in. With most systems, you would be creating a new share, or you would be moving everything off of the system and rebuilding the RAID to build the volume, the size that you need it. With Evo, we're going to let you adjust on the fly. So as long as you have credentials to get in and the free space to grow into, let's make it 100 gigs. So now we come back, this refreshes back to the server, and we're going to watch that Adobe volume actually change in size live on the fly. Now it's 100 gigs. Now it's not nearly as full as green, and now I can begin to ingest that extra 40 gigs of material instead of 35 that I thought I had. So you don't have to build this and be stuck. You can adapt. You can kind of figure out what you need to do and go from there. The other thing we've brought in, so not only can I grow a file or a space, a project space for us to work on, I can also shrink it back. So maybe you have an editor who never deletes anything, and they've clogged up all the storage. So you want to force them to have to go back and actually clean up the workspace, get rid of some of the scratch renders that weren't necessary anymore. We can come back and we can just shrink that volume down. Let's take it back to 35 gigs. And now we're going to make it, it's going to be fairly red. There's not going to be any room to put anything else, so your editor's going to have to clean some stuff up. This gives you the ability to be a bit of a vindictive network admin if you want to be. Completely up to you. The other thing that we focus on beyond ease of use is human error. We try to use servers and technology to eliminate as much human error as possible. Now, a lot of people like to use will ask me, hey, is it idiot-proof? Nothing is idiot-proof. If you give an idiot a toy, they will break it. However, we can try to make things as idiot-resistant as possible. So some of the things we worry about in shared storage with that kind of stuff is permissions to delete things. And the reason that's so important is if I delete something off of my computer, just off of my Mac or off of my Windows machine, it goes to the trash can or it goes to the recycle bin until I empty it. So I can go bring it back. I have an intermediary step that prevents me from actually blowing it away. If I made a mistake and I click delete, I can go get it back. That's not true with most network shares. So if you're doing something, you're doing that go to server, you're over those NAS protocols. If somebody accidentally deletes something, it's gone. And hopefully you don't need it anymore. So when someone walks into your office as post supervisor and says to you, we didn't really need the shots of last week's event anymore, right? We were done. Instead of having a small heart attack and worrying about which drive that might be on and having to go find it, what we've done is we've actually given you the ability to undelete. So I can go in here. Oops, I deleted it. Wasn't supposed to do that. Same thing. Now we can come back into the web UI. I can just scroll down here. Notice we have the recycle bin set. Right now it's set to not automatically purge files. That's certainly not recommended because you can fill up your storage with trash files. So you can set this to be a day, a week, a month, a year, however long you think it's going to take you to catch it or not to need it anymore. But I can come in and I can actually browse the deleted files on the Evo. And there it is. There's the .mvi file that I just deleted. There's two actually, so somebody else deleted something else. Let's go ahead and just restore those items. So now instead of having to kill your intern, you can just shake your head in a disappointed manner and let them go back to work. So as we refresh back here, we'll see the files reappear. And there they are, IMVI file. So it's not just gone. So again, you're protected. The other thing we're going to do here is we're going to be able to integrate with a lot of the other pieces of the production lifecycle. So if you're doing live events, for instance, and you want to integrate with a TriCaster or a video switcher, I can live capture those into these volumes, and you can actually go live to post on set. So you can have multiple deliverables from an event. We try to integrate with as many different pieces of whether it be software or hardware that we can so that we can sit behind. Because storage has to play with everything. It's the center. Everything that we create has to go somewhere. And now that we're in the age of drives are much less expensive, We don't have to delete anything anymore. We don't have to worry about it. We can just keep everything, keep it organized, because you never know what is going to be valuable tomorrow, right? Now we're going to jump in a little bit to some of the application-specific workflows. You can see that we have an Adobe here, we have an Avid, we have an FCPX. These are obviously the three primary NLEs. Please know that if you're using legacy Final Cut like Final Cut 7, Adobe and Final Cut 7 handle their files in the same way, so anything I talk to you about Adobe here is going to be perfectly pertinent to legacy Final Cut. Avid, as we all know, is its own unique animal and likes to do things its own way. We can let it do things its own way, and I'll show you that here in just a second. And FCPX is kind of a new, halfway between Adobe and Avid as far as the way it handles its files. It has a database behind it, and it's driven in that way. But let's go production application by production application here. So first and foremost, we need to be able to share source material. That's pretty straightforward. You're going to be able to load it onto a share. Everyone mounts that share, and everyone can open the same source clip. Because what happens when we edit is we don't destructively edit our source material. It lives in the way it was originally ingested until it's acted upon by the NLE. And when it's acted upon, the NLE is either creating markers, well, it's a project file, and those actually live within the project file. It's not changing the source footage until we render, and then it's actually creating a new file. So it's still leaving that existing footage in place unchanged because we don't want to lose anything. We might change our mind about what shot or cut we need. So getting forward from there is pretty easy. We can see what's going on. I can drag things into my NLE if I want to come down to Premiere or what have you. But the next problem, what we run into then is when we need to collaborate. So we can collaborate on source material, but what if we need to collaborate on a project file? Well, Adobe in particular, especially FCP as well as FCP7, is not what they call network aware. And what that means is it doesn't necessarily know it's on a network. It just sees a space to drop stuff and save stuff, and it saves it there. Pretty straightforward, except when we get into a multiple editor environment. So you and I as editors can actually open the same project file at the same time. And you don't know I have it, and I don't know you have it. Adobe doesn't know that we both have it. So what that leads to is last guy to save wins. He overwrites the other person's work. So if one person saves and then another person saves, somebody's going to have a really bad morning. So what we've done to prevent that is we've created this auto-locking mechanism. And the way this works is it happens by file extension. You tell Evo what types of files you like to lock. So it's not limited necessarily to Premiere or FCP7. I could lock an After Effects file. I could lock Photoshop. I could lock a Word document for all I care. I don't know why you would, but you can't. So you just tell Evo what file extension as long as it's a single file object. And the way that then looks in the workflow is when I open a file, I get a green right lock. I'm the right user. Everyone else on the network, we're going to jump over to another workstation here. This is our Demo 2 workstation. And we're going to pop into the Adobe Share. And now we can see that Demo 1 is actually working on those two files. So again, this is great in a couple of different ways as well. If you're a post soup or a producer, you can see what people are working on. I know who's working on what, where, what the file they have open. If you're an alternative, if you're an assistant editor that wants to go in and do an intro outro off of this file, off of this timeline, you can. You can open it. You can open it in a read-only form, and then when you try to Command Save or Command S, instead of overwriting the primary editor's work and blowing away the timeline, you're going to be defaulted off to a Save As and forced to version it off as intro outro or something like that. So you're protected. And one of the key things to understand too, well, there are other software layer systems sometimes that claim Adobe file locking and things like that. They usually do it as a trick of the UI. So as long as the file is opened from their interface, in our case the share browser, you're protected. But we actually lock at the file system level. So if an editor, force of habit, you bring in an intern or a freelancer, they don't really understand the share browser, they don't want to search, they understand the file structure, but they open their project file from the Finder as opposed to using the share browser, just because that's what they're used to. If they try to save, they're going to be defaulted off to a Save As well. So again, as idiot resistant as humanly possible. We don't force you to do it our way, but we try to protect you no matter which way you do it. So again, if I open this in read-only now, I can say yes, that lock will turn red when I do that. And then if I try to save, it's going to take me to a Save As. The other thing we can do, because the other way this is, again, useful is for a producer to log in over the top and see what an editor has done up until the moment they logged in. So instead of doing approval renders and having those long approval meetings, I can actually log in over the top of the editor, see what they've done, and then comment back against it. Don't even bother rendering it. I don't like this transition. Or couldn't we use the shot of this person instead of this person? Or whatever. You have the comments field for that to be able to communicate back and forth. The only time anything automatic becomes a problem is when things happen out of sequence. What if the producer got in first and opened your file and was looking at it, and then you didn't have write access as the editor? That's a problem for you. Not with Evo. I can right-click here, and I can actually request an unlock. And now back on the other system, I'll get a pop-up message. They'll tell me who wants me to unlock it. Okay, demo 2, maybe this is editor. Maybe it's my name, maybe it's Steve. Either way, we know who has the file, we know who's asking me to give them write permission. If I say yes here on the other system, the lock will drop, and the other editor can open it with write access. If I say no, they'll get a pop-up back. Not right now, I'm busy, and we'll have to find some other way to fight about write permission. But at least we know who we're going to go fight with. We don't have to go poking around in everybody's office or cubicle and, hey, are you working on this file? Are you working on this file? It's there. We know what's going on. We have the ability to kind of fight about it internally there. So that's the file locking workflow for Adobe that's going to protect you and allow you a much deeper level of collaboration if you're a Premiere or Final Cut 7 user, After Effects user, than is natively available in the software itself. So on to the next big purple monster in the room, Avid. Right? Avid wants to do things the way Avid wants to do it, period. It doesn't like to play, historically it doesn't like to play with third-party storage. The reason most people get Avid is because it certainly has the most mature and one of the best collaborative workflows, especially for something like reality TV. It allows multiple users into that same project file by its nature, by the way it works, actually into its bin files, if you're familiar with the Avid system. Avid's naming conventions are a bit different. Projects are made up of bins. So a bin in Avid is much more like a project file would be in Final Cut 7 or in Premiere. So what we do is Avid does that inside of its software. All of that famous Avid workflow, that project and bin locking that they're so known for, is actually coded into Media Composer. It's not coded into the storage itself. So Avid is very proud of their storage. It's very, very expensive. It's something like a 32 terabyte ISIS 5500 is going to cost you somewhere in the realm of $40,000, $35,000, $40,000. A similarly spec'd 32 terabyte Evo system giving you the same workflow and more direct connect ports of GigE to allow you to connect multiple workstations without a switch is going to come in at about $14,000. So 40 or 14. What gives you more flexibility going forward? So what Avid really needs to see is it needs to see a space that looks like it has what Avid has as their file system. And then that unlocks within Media Composer the ability to do all of that native project and bin sharing and, again, world-famous Avid workflow. So notice when I go to mount an Avid space, I mount it as the Avid file system, right, as opposed to an Adobe, which happens over standard network protocol like AFP or SMB. So once Avid sees the Avid file system, it starts to write its file structure in. So you're not going to live, if you're in the Avid workflow, you're not going to live too much in the share browser for the Avid projects the way you would with Adobe. You will live in the share browser for source material to be able to tag and handle all of that stuff. But you're going to go into Avid because that's what Avid's for. It's that you want to work from within Avid. So let's bring up Media Composer on both my machines. So you can see we've got a couple of different bins open. We can see who has each bin, just like you normally would if you were connected to Avid branded storage. I can see my green bin lock. I can run into the other bin if I want to. And get my red bin lock. So I know that I have read access to that bin and I have write access to this bin. So this is really what Avid editors want to see. This is how you work off of Avid branded storage, and this is where you guys live. So we can absolutely provide it. And again, we can provide it at a fraction of the cost. We also tend to be a bit faster. Avid locks you in. When you buy storage from Avid, they tell you this is your storage, this is what you get. You get this many disks set up this way, and this is how fast it is, and you can't do anything to it. With Evo, we let you pool and partition the disks however you see fit. And we have workflow specialists that work with our company and work very closely with media distributors here and your individual sales reps to help define and design a custom workflow built specifically for you and your needs. Because what's fascinating about our industry is that while we all get to the same place, we're all outputting video, whether it be a TV show, a commercial, short form, long form, we're all creating a video, an artistic piece. We all do it in a different way. So a lot of people have, unique challenges within what they do or what legacy equipment they have or their network infrastructure. With SNS, we really try to let you use as much of that as possible, repurpose it, and grow at your own pace. Not, oh, I went to 4K, great. Now I have to change out every machine in my office. I have to change out all of the network infrastructure. that things like where it's a massive expense like that make it very hard for us to make those incremental leaps in technology that we need to stay ahead. Evo allows you to go step by step, go at your own pace. If you want to do it all at once, I'm certainly not going to tell you no. The next big production application is really Final Cut X. Final Cut X has some very interesting ways that it handles things. So Final Cut X has started to use things like events folders, like iPhoto used to, and libraries. And it is network aware. So what happens with Final Cut X is only one instance of a library can be open on the network, which can make it very, very challenging to share source material. Final Cut needs to see a specific network protocol to allow it to create alias files from editors' events folders back to that library. And that's the way Final Cut 10 is going to allow you to share your source material in a collaborative environment. Evo can absolutely give it that network protocol and allow multiple users to be sharing across. And what's really neat here, too, with the asset management is if you want to use the native asset management within your production application, for instance, Premiere gives you the ability to do some asset management, as does Final Cut 10, to be able to have tags and fields that you can search. With Evo, we give you a scale-up path that you only have to tag something once, and you can then take that tag and move it wherever you want. So let's say this is the interior Super Guppy, name of the plane, and we'll hit save. Cool, now that that's tagged, maybe I want to work with that inside of my production application. I can actually export via XML. And if I use FCP7 XML, obviously it'll work for FCP7. That's also what Premiere likes to see. Premiere, when you import it, actually tags will go to the description of the file in the Premiere metadata fields, and the share browser comments, the preform text field will actually go into the log notes field of Premiere. Below that, we can take it out to Final Cut 10. So again, use the native asset management within that. Avid has its own way of doing it. Just enter your stuff in Avid. It'll figure it out. Notice, too, that we also have CatDV XML. So while our asset management is super simple to use and designed to really quickly index and get you going to be able to search and find stuff, there are much higher levels of asset management out there that can force metadata fields or give you groups or search over, a guy in Europe wants to search your database or something. We partnered with CatDV for a very long time. It's a great product. But what we do now is we give you the ability to have an easy-to-use thing that comes free with the server to get your feet wet. And then should you need to explore a larger MAM option, instead of having to re-tag everything, we give you the ability to bring things out of our database in. And if you want to get deeper with notes as you scale up into more robust asset managers, you can certainly do that. But you've got the basics. What we found was 90% of our customers that had asset management only really wanted index, search, comment, tag. I just want to know where my stuff went. I want to be able to find it, and I'd love to put a couple of keywords in there as well to say, this is Bob or Steve talking about whatever, and be able to search against that. So that's there as well. Yeah, every major NLE, we have the ability to, like I said, mix and match. You can plug in, again, those GTech drives, those direct attached drives, whether it be directly into the Evo and reshare them and show them out. So you can repurpose those assets that you've had around for a while. Most production companies and post-production companies do not start with shared storage. They start with a couple editors that have direct attached drives, and they shuttle their drives around. And shared storage is something you scale into. So by Evo giving you the ability to repurpose those legacy assets that you've already spent money on, we're enhancing both the return on investment of your existing purchase and your existing equipment, as well as of the current purchase of the Evo and going forward. We have servers starting as little as $4,800. If you just want to get this workflow, you've got a bunch of storage that you're sharing now, maybe over AFP or SMB, and it works, it streams, but you don't have this asset management, and asset management can be expensive, or you don't have file locking, or you're in an Avid environment and you don't have the Avid project and bin sharing, or you get an Avid project, we can give you a $4,800 server that comes, again, with all of the software for free and gets you into our workflow. And then if you want to scale up with speed over time, you can do that. We have upgrade paths. So you've got that ability to kind of come in. Our servers come in kind of 3 flavors. They're either a 4-bay, an 8-bay, or a 16-bay. Each one has its own scalability criteria. The 8-bay can expand to about 144 terabytes within a single node. The 16 bays can grow to half a petabyte within a single node before you would start connecting through a switch. And we have customers ranging in size, again, from a couple of editors up into the hundreds of editors going 24/7 with 25 shows on here. In the reality space, tend to find reality is far and away the most demanding on storage. So as we go into that, let's jump back over to some of our slides and testimonials here. That was kind of a quick 30,000-foot overview, guys. Hold on, let me find this. So you can see we've got some customer stuff here. MacTV is actually an SNS customer with Media Distributors. These guys helped out and did the install. They've had it now for 6 to 8 months, I guess. Everything's going swimmingly. They had a bunch of kind of drives around, needed to share and collaborate and be able to find stuff. So it's been going great, and we love to have our customers, reach back out and give us positive feedback. We're also really, really good about feature requests. Again, we were born out of an audio studio. We have a bunch of video engineers. So if there's something you see in your day-to-day workflow that, boy, wouldn't it be great if this could happen, we'd love to hear from you. We always try to develop, again, to what the customer's needs are going to be. Zigzag's fascinating. So Zigzag is out of Australia. It's about a 10-man Avid shop. With the Australian dollar being where it is, the Avid storage is even more expensive down there. And what I really like about this one is, again, when the guy got the Evo, Rob Saroff, down there, they do Coast Australia, which is a huge kind of documentary long-form thing, really popular, based off of Coast in England, about the coast of the island. But when he set it up, Evo worked perfectly out of the box. And the highest compliment you can get paid in the Avid world is, if you didn't know any better, you would think you were working on Avid's native storage, right? That's all an Avid editor can really ask for, is to have that collaboration, to have the workflow that they've been trained to work in. And so, again, this is one that I absolutely love. When someone says that to you, it's the best compliment you can get in the Avid world. Gorilla's a little different. So Gorilla had a bunch of SATA disks sitting around. They're one of the largest post-production facilities in England. They didn't know what was on them. They had them sitting in the closet. It was their backup scheme, which was great. But, again, it's like that closet at the end of the hall. If you need to go find it, oh, no. So when Evo came in, not only were they able to start sharing source material and all working collaboratively, not having as many copies floating around, but they were able to index all of those drives that they had out on the shelf and start to manage that as a backup tier or a nearline tier. Now there's a person that can just search, where is this file? Great, it's on drive XYZ. Great, I know XYZ is in that closet. Let's go get that and plug it in real quick because this guy needs it and brings it on. So now they have a wrangler that isn't just guessing and sitting there all day plugging stuff in and trying to figure out where it's going and where it is. They know. So turnaround times and delivery times are much shorter because of it. Metfilm is interesting too, and I imagine there's a lot of you guys out there that are very similar to Met. Met's a large production house, I think 50, 60 editors, but they had an Xsan. So many of us had Xsans with Final Cut 7. It was free. You just needed to put some storage behind it. So the problem being, it's not necessarily free anymore going forward. You can only go up to Xsan 4. After that, you have to kind of change into another kind of storage in advance. And this is also neat because it's got a mix. It's got a colorist as well as a bunch of online editors. So color grading is one of the most demanding things on storage we can do as well, because we tend to grade out in a very high codec, deliverable codec. So maybe it's a DPX sequence or a TIFF sequence, or it's 4K uncompressed, because that's what we're delivering. What's neat here is the colorist can be sharing the final render and the full res, while the online editors are all still working away on other projects, all on one central storage. So again, we don't have to copy from one storage device to a local drive and take the time to do that on a large file copy. And then what we did was we replaced an Xsan. So the limitation with Xsan is Xsan was designed for Final Cut 7. It wasn't designed for Avid. So when these guys were forced, because of Apple's, well, I'll let you guys judge how Apple released Final Cut X, but because they were forced to switch from Final Cut 7 to stay current, they went to Avid. And Xsan doesn't have that native Avid collaboration. So if you had an Xsan, what do? You're limited in where you can go. I can't necessarily pick Avid as my NLE, even if it is the best fit. With Evo, we can come in and we can provide you that ability to have the Avid emulated space, as well as, heck, if you want to keep running your Xsan on top of the Evo hardware, you can even do that and have it present inside the share browser. So we give you that maximum and flexibility to be able to, again, just repurpose what you have and then bring in enhanced functionality specific to what you may need to do in the future. Okay, so I'm a bit of a sports nut, so this one's my favorite, the Fox Sports case study. Any of you that watched the Super Bowl last year, if you watched the MLB All-Star Game, if you watched the Daytona 500, all of the commercial cutaways are done on the Evo. And that's done from an EVS broadcast system. This could also be done, again, off of a NewTek TriCaster, off of a Ross switcher, really anything out there that supports live ingest. So what happens is, as Fox is on site, they have all their inputs and their program feed coming in directly attached via fiber channel from the A production van to the C production van. All of that material flows onto an evo. It's then quickly turned around, cut up with its graphical overlays put on by an editor. This is still done in Final Cut 7, by the way, which is great. And then pushed back to the EVS for playout. So whenever you see those cool Fox graphics, whether it be the little robots or whatever, you're actually watching an Evo editor go live, an Evo artist go, and work with some of our live production systems as well. So the ability to do that kind of thing in a live environment and branding, and again having those alternative cuts out, can be really, really useful. So I'd also like to invite you guys to, if you have any other questions or anything that we don't get to here in just a minute when we go to the Q&A session, or you'd like to get a specific idea of how Evo would work in your environment, highly encourage you to call your media distributors reps. These guys are very familiar with my product, and they can always get me on the phone and get my team and engineers on the phone. We'll be more than happy to start speccing out a specific environment and what it might look like in the way that you work and how it can help you on a day-to-day basis. And as we said, the price points are generally a lot lower. Most people, historically, when you start to think about shared storage, you figure you have to have $30,000. That's not the case at all. Again, our systems start as little as $4,800 and can scale as high as you want them to scale. So feel free to give us a call anytime. And the GoPro Hero. And the black one, by the way, which makes it even cooler. All of you for attending today are automatically entered to win this thing, and I'm sure media distributors will be reaching out to somebody soon, some lucky person, and take it wakeboarding or something. Give us some cool video back after you get it. We'd appreciate it. So with that, I'd like to open it up for question and answer, and I'm going to go ahead and kill the screen share. There. So we have our first question here from Jeff, who apparently has a 200 terabyte Xsan. Is there a trade-in program, and will our software work with Promise hardware? So anything that has an open network protocol, absolutely. We can work with the Promise hardware. We can extend and either reshare that, or we can do it at the SAN layer if we want to, and kind of go through that. We do offer on a per-case basis sometimes some consideration for trade-in or things like that. If everything is still working, depending upon how old those servers may be, it may be more cost. There might be more cost benefit for you to keep them in production for a little while until they start to die, and that way you need a smaller initial online storage investment, and then as those retire, you can grow with the Evo and with our solution over time to keep the budget small. But we can absolutely start to help you, whether it be with, my engineers have different migration paths and things like that. I just did a big replacement of FiberJet up in Pittsburgh, where we were able to help do a lot of the migration, or at least what the best practices for that migration are. Generally, we don't do the migration ourselves. The integrators, like media distributors, or someone would actually do that. Let's look at another one. From Kevin. How well does it play with Autodesk products? So Autodesk is kind of a unique beast too. Quick answer is very well. It's very easy to build a system that's going to work with that. Now, some Autodesk products are Linux-based, like you've got Flame and Lustre. The only thing you would be missing on the Linux side is we don't have a Linux client. Most of the Linux users we have like to work in the command line, so we let them. With the like Smoke on Mac, for instance, absolutely fine. I have many, many customers using Smoke, Flame, and Lustre across a variety of, well, quite frankly, continents. We've got a big Flame user in South Africa. We've got some Smoke houses up in Canada and stuff. And I'd love to find out more, actually, Kevin, if you could call into your sales rep at some point and get on the phone with me. I'd love to see what you're doing with the Autodesk products, because I see some people starting to use them as alternative NLEs instead of like an Avid or something. I'd love to find out more about that from you. And on here we've got Tony. Does the system handle transcoding? So again, with Evo, we like to be as open as possible. You can, we are getting to a point here where we can start to do some transcoding and path-based proxies and things like that. But most of the time, what we'll do is play with third-party people. So if you've got something like a Telestream, which is designed just as a transcode engine, and you have some limitations too. You don't necessarily want the transcoding engine living on your shared storage. The reason for that being, what if you have to take the shared storage down for a minute? Because all transcoding have to stop? Or what if you have to do some maintenance on the transcoding piece? Does every editor have to get offline? So sometimes, well, it's great to have as many things in one box as you can a lot of the time. Sometimes it's better to have a box that does one or two things really, really well and streams that out so it doesn't affect other pieces of your workflow. You don't create a single point of failure and things like that. But yes, we do work with any transcoding software that's out there. So whether it be, or hardware, so whether it be a Telestream Vantage, whether it be a Tools on Air, whether it be Adobe Media Encoder, whatever, the Evo is going to be compatible with it, and it's going to provide a space for those transcodes to go. We also do support path-based proxies. So once you created the proxy file or transcoded to a proxy, Evo can remember that link so that when you're seeing a preview in the share browser, you're only playing back the proxy. You're not taking up a full stream's worth of bandwidth across the network. So we do have some stuff for that, and I'd love to get into it a little deeper with you. Again, feel free to call in. I look forward to that. So the next thing we have is Trevor here, who actually got to play with the Evo at NAB a little bit. He's wondering if there's basically partial search. So what we can do from that, so what he's saying is, do you have to punch in the entire term to search? Like if we were searching for something like Super Guppy, could I punch in super and get Super Guppy, right? Guys, I'm actually, I believe, Kevin, that has been fixed. If not, it's certainly being fixed. I'm just trying to verify that in my little demo environment over here before I speak out of turn. So yes, now if I punch in the word super or guppy, instead of having the entire thing tagged, I will get the results there. Yeah, so partial search, absolutely. Does that answer the question? Feel free to throw that back in there. Oh, you're welcome. Got another one from Jeff here, too, the XSAN. So one problem we have with XSAN is that we have Windows users whose folder paths don't match the Macs. So how do we deal with cross-platform functionality like this? So when you get into XSAN in the Windows environment, you're no longer playing with XSAN. XSAN was free with the Mac and with the Windows OS. And so what you have to do is then, there's a couple of problems when you bring Windows onto XSAN. A, you wind up having to buy StoreNext, which then does have per-seat license fees that can range anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 per computer. When you deal with an XSAN as well, you're really dealing with two networks when you get into XSAN. So you're dealing with both a metadata network and your primary fiber channel network for media. So it becomes infinitely more complex. With Evo, we can force a drive letter to always be the same when it mounts in Windows, so you don't have all those relinking issues and things like that. It knows the path stays constant, even though it doesn't have drive names. So that's kind of how we handle that. I think I'm out of questions, guys. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to chat about or send in? Any integration questions as far as other things you might have in your network? Again, please remember that anything that you have, chances are, if it's non-proprietary, we're going to be able to fold it in and give you a central point to deal with all of it. And with those direct-attached drives, whether they be USB or Thunderbolt, you can get adapters and actually plug in directly to the server and have them re-shared out through the share browser as well. So. And if you plug them in once, you only have to plug them in once and then unplug them to have them indexed. So you can kind of go through and just do a quick, oh great, let's harvest all the metadata from these drives real quick so we know where everything is. So this can be a pretty quick process to start getting you organized and getting kind of control of everything that's been going on for a lot of people have years of footage backed up. So we try to give you a quick way to get that all going.
I think the 30-minute consultation is, if you have more questions, we can dig into this further.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we got a couple of more. What types of connections can we use? We can use 1 gig Ethernet. We can use 10 gig Ethernet directly in the back of the server. We can use fiber channel. We can actually bridge fiber channel to iSCSI, which is cool. So in the case of, for instance, your XSAN environment, you could actually take some of those fiber-attached promise rates, plug them into the back of an Evo, and have them reshared over the Ethernet. Not necessarily as a NAS reshare. They can be reshared at the block level over iSCSI. So now you can have a laptop computer plug in and see an XSAN volume and do that. We also support quite a bit of port density. So instead of having to need a switch, which adds a lot of network expense and an extra network hops, with a 16-bay Evo, I can direct connect up to 28 1 gigabit Ethernet users. I can direct connect up to 12 10 gig users, or up to 12 fiber channel users without the need for a switch. We do also support link aggregation and multipathing should we need to get more speed to a specific workstation for anything like maybe 4K DPX work or something like that. So the next thing I have is a specific kind of workflow question here, which is great. So in this case, someone has a lot of external drives that they're working on right now, and they're asking what the minimum network requirements would be to work with 3 editors. So a lot of that's going to be dependent. A lot of this you'll see in the consultation too. This is where we really want to get into the nitty-gritty of your workflow and how it goes. A lot of that's going to be dependent on what codec you use. If you're using something like ProRes 422 and you're just doing A/B cut, standard camera 1, camera 2 stuff for 3 editors, I would expect you to need, 6 streams of ProRes. I'd expect you to need about 4 disks in the RAID to give you the speed, and then each one having their own 1 gig line, or maybe 2 of them sharing a 1 gig line should be sufficient. ProRes 422 is about 18 megabytes per second-ish. So figure when you're dealing with an Evo over a 1 gig line, you get pretty close to line speed, so you'd be able to get about 100 megabytes or so out of a 1 gig space, depending upon the protocol and how we have it shared out. And this is really important to you guys. When you're talking to storage vendors, whether it be me or anyone else, or you're talking to media distributors, or anyone you're talking to, there's a common misconception in our industry that you can take the theoretical throughput of a box. Let's say I know I get, throwing a number out here, 300 megabytes out of 4 disks, right? And I've got 10 guys sharing video, and it's all ProRes HQ or DNX 220 Avid speed. That's about a 30 megabyte per second codec. So what most storage manufacturers will do is they'll say, great, I got 300 megabytes, this is 30 megs a piece, I get 10. I get 10 streams. So that's how we get there. That is not how that works. Each codec deals differently with the storage. Each one has its different levels of overhead. So all of the testing, when we spec a system, when we give you stream counts, when I say something, and this is an accurate number, when I say something like 8 disks of an Evo will give you 20 streams of ProRes HQ or DNX HD 220 at any given moment across the network. The way that we've arrived at that number at SNS is we have 20 machines in our lab set up to hit an Evo, and we throw video at it all day. We transcode, we use different source material, different file sizes, we use 6K, we use 4K, so that we're always on top of making sure that whatever system you get from us, it's going to perform. It's all real-world testing. So yeah, that's important to see. But yeah, Tony, I would expect you to be able to get away with 4 to 8 disks, depending upon what your storage requirement is, and giggy connectivity should be fine. And a lot of that, again, is going to depend on the codec you're using, and that kind of stuff. I'd want to drill in with you a bit more to find out from that standpoint, just to be sure. And what's neat too, guys, is you can always scale this up. As you grow a RAID, it gets faster as well. There are more disks pushing behind it. So when you scale, there are a couple of reasons to scale a shared storage server. You can scale either because you need more capacity or because you need more performance. And so there's a couple of leapfrogging bottlenecks that we deal with. The first thing we worry about is how many aggregate streams across the network and how many disks do we need to push that. The next thing we have to worry about is how many streams to each workstation. So if you're doing a lot of multicam work, it might not be best to have just a 1 gig line to those workstations. Maybe we want to go 8 gig fiber. Maybe we want to go 10 gig Ethernet. Evo gives you the flexibility to do that, but it's really important to understand Well, a box might be able to provide 20 streams. The bottleneck then becomes the connectivity to that workstation. And so again, they kind of leapfrog. Can the box provide enough? Can the connection provide enough? Okay, well, great. Now the connection can provide more than the box. Do we need more disks to make that faster? So the most important thing to understand is wherever, again, you start today, Evo can grow. And as it grows, not only does it increase your capacity, but your speed. Do we have any other questions? All right, it looks like time is pretty much running out here. Thank you, everyone, so much for taking the time to sit through this with us today. Hopefully we've helped enlighten some, and if there's some ways this can help you, we certainly look forward to hearing from you. So thanks again, and you guys have a wonderful afternoon. Good luck on the GoPro.